Hey everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to the Division 2 and Happy New Year's Eve, everybody. Today is the final day of 2024. Now, I don't have a script for today's video. I have some bullet points that I want to hit off on, but as I kind of like to do at the end of any given year, I really like to look back and reflect on what this year brought and delivered and what happened for the Division franchise. Now look, I've been covering the Division here on YouTube consistently for a bit over 5 years now. I've been following the franchise very closely ever since it released, so going on nearly 9 years. And 2024 has got to be one of the most interesting years for the Division that I've ever seen. So I want to talk about it, give some of my thoughts on it, and yeah, that's the general plan for this video. Very quickly before we dive in, I did want to give a quick shout out to the Wreck-It New Year's event that I am both kind of posting and partaking in. It'll be happening in a few hours from the time I'm posting this video, but myself, several other awesome people from the community, and a bunch of you all are going to be jumping into the survival game mode in the Division 1. This is on all platforms, Xbox, PlayStation, PC. The little card I'm throwing on screen here is the infographic. It will also be posted on my community tab, so feel free to check that out for further details. But yeah, I'll be going live here on the channel at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, and the event starts 1 hour after that. Hope to see you all there, either in-game or watching in the stream. But let's get into this, shall we? As I said, 2024 was an absolute roller coaster for this franchise. So let's wind back the clock and just start at the beginning of 2024 and head towards now in terms of what all the major events and milestones were. If you go back to the start of the year, the big topic of conversation was Project Resolve. Right, this is the big initiative and update that was coming alongside the Year 5 Season 3 update. And in general, compared to everything else that we're going to cover for the rest of the year, I would say that this was the highest point for the Division 2 this year, at least the point at which the most amount of the player base was content and satisfied. Of course, not everybody was over the moon that we were getting an update focused on game health instead of focusing on new content. But if you go down the list of what Project Resolve did, for one, it was on time, maybe even a bit ahead of schedule, which I think a lot of people appreciated. It seemed to do a lot for the technical side of the game. Now, I don't play on PC regularly, so I can't really comment on the crashing issue that the game faced for such a long time, but it seemed like Project Resolve was one of the biggest initiatives that really helped fix that whole situation up. You had stuff that satisfied a lot of PvP players. This was probably my favorite update of the year, both because we got the status effect rework as well as the mini conflict revamp. Those two things, particularly the conflict one, really kind of reinvigorated my love for PvP in this game. Obviously, I still don't think it is anywhere near as good as the Division 1's was, but the fact that conflict now rewarded you for your time with really good XP and loot, the fact that it disabled shade watches and expertise to make a much more balanced experience, just everything they did there made the mode a lot more fun. It still has its issues. It still has things that I would love to see, including new maps and modes, please, massive. But overall, what Project Resolve did for PvP was a big win in my eye. There was balancing stuff, quality of life things like tinkering, right? They did a lot of good things, in my opinion. Project Resolve overall, I would say, was a pretty solid addition for the game and the community. In hindsight, I would say the downside to Project Resolve is that every update that has come since then, it kind of set an expectation that they would be of a certain technical quality, since they said we have delayed content and we have put this update in this spot so that we can add additions to the game that will help us with future additions, right? Being like, this will improve the technical reliability of the game. And I don't know if we've really seen that. But we had Project Resolve in the kickoff of Year 5 Season 3. Moving down the line a few months then, we then got to kind of the end of that season story-wise, where we had our first big mini controversy. And that was because at the end of Year 5 Season 3, that is when it was revealed that Aaron Keener was alive, as well as Theo Parnell. Kelso was going to join up with them, and we had that whole, reveal. Now, this didn't get the community as riled up and vicious as you would see it get even later in the year, as we'll get to, but there was definitely a bit of pushback and resilience to this plot development, right? On the one hand, Aaron Keener was back, and for myself and a lot of people, he was the best villain that the Division franchise had ever had. He was just a very entertaining character to follow along with, kind of learn about his ideology, see what steps he's taking. But on the flip side, even if there was a somewhat reliable lore explanation for how he and Theo had returned or faked their deaths to begin with, it is still following the trope of bringing characters back from the dead, which a lot of people are not a fan of, and that is myself included. So again, that wasn't the biggest controversy of the year, but I think that's when you began to see people get a little bit hesitant towards what the Division 2 was aiming towards and doing. Our first real gut punch came shortly after that, and it didn't directly even have to do with the Division 2, but it did in a way. Of course, I'm referring to the cancellation of the Division Heartland. This one was a real blow. Now, of course, some people didn't care about the premise of this game to begin with. I was somebody who did. I was very much looking forward to the Division Heartland, and I was quite heartbroken, no pun intended, when they announced that it was canceled. But as far as the Division 2 goes specifically, I think there were two things here that really made this hurt even more. One was how we began to get a lot of comments coming out, even some from ex-developers, saying that, yeah, Heartland was going to be an addition to the Division 2, is originally going to be like a spin-off inside Battle Royale / Survival 2.0 mode, and then Red Storm and Ubisoft kind of had the idea to split it off into its own game, right? And so that was kind of frustrating because we're like, well, we haven't had Red Storm now in the game for like 5 years. We've lost that support over the last 5 years, and now this thing didn't even come to fruition. They spent all that time and it went nowhere. So that hurt in and of itself, but then we got to Year 6 Season 1, which we'll talk about more, but that came out about, a month later, and we started to see that from the Descent comms and from some of the season comms themselves, that was the season where they began to tie in Heartland stuff immensely, and that has stuck around even to this current day, the story that we're still getting right now. In Year 6, they laid out this whole thing for how they were going to begin tying in and setting up Heartland's narrative so that we could continue that once we got the game ourselves. But given the game was canceled like 3 weeks before that was all set to begin, they couldn't really go back and change that stuff, meaning we're still getting it. They added like redactions so that the word Silver Creek wasn't said. That was the location that was going to be in the Division Heartland. So it really was all kind of just a mess. And again, just really sad and unfortunate, to me at least, that we never got to see Heartland, that we'll never even get to play it. So that was kind of a tough one too. People were a bit riled up about the Division 2 story. We had just gotten the cancellation of Heartland, but this was leading us into Ubisoft Forward. And this is where I think myself and a lot of people were really hoping for something that would come in and, raise spirits again a little bit. We had our overall expectation set because we knew what the Year 6 roadmap was, right? They said there would be Season 1, Season 2 would deliver Seasons 2.0, Season 3 would deliver the DLC in 2025. So I don't think anyone was expecting any kind of like groundbreaking announcement that we weren't aware of, but there were some hints that had gone on beforehand that maybe Season 1 would contain something that we hadn't heard about yet. People were hoping for maybe just some tiny content additions to keep us tided over for the rest of Year 6, of course leading to the DLC. It turns out that we didn't really get much of any of that. Now I'm going to talk about the big controversy that came out of Ubisoft Forward next, but the big thing that happened that people weren't really all of that impressed by was one endgame. That was the big feature and kind of surprise that they were saving for Year 6 Season 1. Now look, I think one endgame is a good initiative. I'm glad they did it for the game. If you need a reminder, that's the thing where they made it so that any character and player can make it to level 40 regardless of if you own the Warlords expansion or not. Basically, they just expanded access for the Division 2 to more people, made the endgame more accessible, brought more people into one united experience. Like I said, I think that is a good thing to do. However, to tease that as like a big surprise to the existing player base, and especially if you look timeline-wise, that it was coming in between a big health update for the game, which delivered no new content, and right before a Seasons revamp, which was exciting, the prospect of it to myself and a lot of others, but it also wasn't delivering any big content. It was definitely just a bit deflating, and so that was one big thing there. And before we again touch on the controversy that came out of Ubisoft Forward, I think this has led to a revelation I kind of had shortly after Ubisoft Forward, but it's definitely solidified, later on to the year even now. Part of the reason that I think so many people are not even necessarily burnt out, but they're just not playing the Division as much, or they're not as excited for what's coming up in the future, it's because we haven't had anything new to look forward to in a long time. What do I mean by that? Well, we're still filling out the roadmap that we were given back in April of 2023 at Division Day, right? Because originally, Year 5 Season 4, which was an update we never got after they shuffled things around, that update was going to deliver Seasons 2.0 and the Brooklyn DLC immediately after Year 5 Season 3 and Vanguard and the whole Aaron Keener stuff there. They then decided to do Project Resolve, which pushed a lot of things back, and essentially Year 6 of the game became that one update, right? They split it up into 3 updates. We got the endgame revamp in Season 1 with one endgame. We got Seasons 2.0 this season in Year 6 Season 2, and then we're getting the DLC next season. Now that's all fine if they want to do it that way, but again, like I said, that means that we haven't had any like new even ideas to think about and look forward to, which is a big thing, I would say, in gaming and in live service gaming for sure. You want to have new roadmaps, you want to have new things to look forward to speculate on, to talk about. We simply haven't had any of that in almost 2 years now because they're still filling out that roadmap from April of 2023. So that's one thing that I'm definitely looking forward to in 2025 is hopefully seeing a roadmap for Year 7, getting some new things to actually talk about, tangibilize, if that's a word, and just look forward to. But we'll come back to that. Let's then talk about the major controversy that spiraled out of Ubisoft Forward. I would say kind of set the tone for the community and franchise for the rest of the year, which was kind of unfortunate. But that was, of course, the revelation and announcement of seasonal characters. For a brief recap, or if you didn't know, originally Seasons 2.0, which is what we're playing right now, that's what they delivered this season, was going to be built upon the foundation of seasonal characters, where every new season you would start a new character at level 1, there would be kind of a revamped progression, you would play with the modifiers, you would have kind of a different loot structure, and they were doing this as a way to both kind of curb our power gain, kind of set everybody on the level playing field every season. They were doing it as a way to bring more people into the experience so that they didn't feel like they were years and years behind in terms of unlocks and all that stuff. It was a bold idea. I think you can give them that, even if you weren't a fan of the idea itself, to do, 6 years into a game's life. But yeah, they were going to put forth seasonal characters. You had a few people who were open to the idea or supported it. I was one of those. I mean, I still wanted to actually play it before I made a final decision, and I made that very clear in my videos. But the idea of being on a more level playing field, actually having a bit of a difficulty grind again, a difficulty curve to go through in the game instead of just, mowing through every piece of content that comes our way, that was something that I was definitely looking forward to. And I will still argue that having some kind of a seasonal dark zone would have been awesome. Having that low level experience again in the DZ, hunting for rare loot, that would have been fun. However, the vast amount of the community was vehemently against this idea. And I will say, even to this day, the amount of pushback this got was impressive. Like how the community was able to mobilize and voice that opinion on YouTube, on social media, Reddit, Twitter, Discord, whatever. It was impressive. And so that entire controversy led to a whirlwind next few months. The devs tried to explain their position a little bit better. The community was still saying, no, we're not really a fan of that. Ultimately, we never even got to try or see the seasonal character pitch or idea because they scrapped the initiative. They said, we're going to move forward without them. They had to extend Year 6 Season 1 a little bit to make that switch in the back end because they were now converting all of Seasons 2.0 stuff to be happening on our main characters. So after a very long wait with, again, no real big content addition for Year 6 Season 1, we finally got to Year 6 Season 2, or the build up to it with the PTS phases. And I would say overall, this update has gone relatively well. Some people have some quarrels with stuff like the modifiers and some of the bugs that we've seen with those in the update in general. But yeah, I would say it is really only now in the latter parts of the year here that the community finally seems to be stabilizing a little bit, maybe heading a bit on that upward trend again towards being a bit more content with what the game is offering, but still nowhere near the point that we were at heading into this year, I think personally. Now look, here's the thing. You are never going to please everybody. That is a fact in gaming, that is a fact in art you put out, that is a fact in every facet of life. But regardless of what your opinion or view has been on the Division 2 and the Division franchise over the past 12 months, I think a lot of us can agree that it has been a long time since we've had one solid win for this game, right? The majority of people were favorable with the Project Resolve update overall, but it did push back new content we were looking forward towards, like the DLC, and it hasn't really improved the technical side of the game all that much like it was claimed to be doing. Year 6 Season 1 did a nice initiative for newer players and for the overall health of the game, but again, didn't really deliver any new content to excite the existing player base, and it was kind of drowned out in the controversy of seasonal characters that were announced alongside it. Then you still have the story, which is still being debated by a lot of people. A lot of folks are not a fan of the direction that is taking. You have the Heartland cancellation, you have the launch of this season, which again I would say went a bit better, but there's still a lot of people who really aren't a huge fan of what they're doing. So it has just been a long time since we've had one solid single win for the game. And if you take that fact and you combine it with the fact that we've had a lack of new content for a long time, it's been 14 months since our last new content, like true new content addition to the game with the Paradise Lost Incursion in Year 5 Season 2. Combine that with what I was talking about earlier, which is just the lack of new concepts to look forward to. Again, we're still filling out the roadmap that we got back in early 2023. We haven't even had the new name or presentation or whatever of a new game mode or a new content concept to look forward to. I think the culmination of all of those factors is what has really led us to this kind of weird slump that it feels like we've been in. Now, just because it's been a rocky year, does that mean that I prescribe to the idea that, oh my god, the Division is dead, it's gonna go away, we're never gonna get this DLC or new stuff in the future? No, it does not. This might come as a shocker to some of you, but I've got hope for the future, right? If you take a look at what is happening behind the scenes, Massive Entertainment's focus is now back on the Division, with the Division 3. That seems to be now the largest project that they have in development. Beyond that, in these recent weeks here, year we've had Julian Garrity return to the franchise as executive producer. That means that he is definitely spending a lot of his time looking at what they're doing with the Division 3, but his focus is also on the Division 2's ongoing stuff, everything else that the franchise is offering in terms of transmedia and everything else. So hopefully in the following months, that means that we see things like more consistent communication, more news updates and announcements that we can kind of put a bit more stake in since he is now in that position. Additionally, we're done with the revamp updates, at least as far as we know. I would hope so, at least, right? We've done Project Resolve, we did one Endgame, we did Seasons 2.0. Those were the big initiatives that the devs were pushing as far as revamping the structure of the game. Next season, Year 6 Season 3 is the DLC, and then presumably we're getting Year 7 beyond that. That seems to have been pretty much confirmed, and we're going to talk about this more in a video tomorrow. But yeah, from here on out, we should now be focusing on actual new content for the game, which is great. And so look, while 2024 was indeed a roller coaster, one hell of a one, I have faith that 2025 will be brighter. I don't think it's all worked out perfectly in the way that the devs envisioned it, but hopefully the work done to the game these past 3 title updates pays off in making the game more accessible and well set for the future so that they can add more content to the game, but the overall structure is still better for people to get back into it and get to that point, because ultimately that services everybody. We want a game that is exciting to play and log into every new week and season, but we also want a game that is accessible to people who want to join on, because ultimately new blood is what keeps franchises like these alive as the years go on, and the Division is heading towards its first decade as a franchise. That is wild to say, but it's true. In 2026, it will have been 1 decade, 10 years since the Division 1 released. It's important to continue bringing new people in, as it is also very important to satisfy people who have been here for those 10 years, like myself, like many of you, I'm sure. So we'll see where things go. Once again, Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you all had an okay 2024. And look, despite the rockiness that this year brought for the franchise, 2024 was the best year for my channel here so far. And I can't thank you all enough for making that a reality. We had so many new people join our community here. So many fun project videos that I never thought would go anywhere do super well. So much amazing discussion and feedback given in the comment sections. Truly, I can't thank you all enough for going on this journey with me. It is a privilege to be able to continue putting out videos here and just enjoying my favorite franchise with all of you. So I'm excited for what's next for this game and franchise as ever, and we'll see what that turns out to be. Here we go. The cheesy outro is coming. I will see you all next year, and until then, folks, RogueGold out.